Uncle Walt, the man who built the House of Mouse. He revolutionized the world of Western animation and created a company that would define the childhoods of generations and eventually become a behemoth that owned 40% of the box office with a global annual revenue of $83 billion. But Walt Disney died merely a month after a surprise diagnosis of lung cancer at the age of 65 on December 15th, 1966. Today, rumors persist that Disney's death wasn't the end of his story. Urban myth says that he was frozen, preserved, hidden under Disneyland until the day will come that he can be revived, cured of cancer, and continue his life's work. But where did this rumor come from? And is there any truth to it? Firstly, let's examine whether there's any plausibility to this urban myth. Surprisingly, there is. You've probably heard the term cryogenics. This is the science of creating very low temperatures and studying the effects. It could be used to make liquid gases or preserve organs for transplant surgery, or something else entirely. For instance, the Large Hadron Collider is the biggest cryogenic system in the world because the electromagnets it uses to accelerate particles need to be kept colder than outer space. Cryonics is the belief that using cryogenic technology, dead humans can be preserved and resurrected. It's an expensive business. The US-based Cryonics Institute charges $28,000 for the service, while the European company Tomorrow Biostasis charges €200,000. At least it's a one-time fee. As of 2023, about 500 people have been cryonically preserved so that one day they can be brought back to life. Walt Disney is not among them, at least officially. But it makes sense that he would be. After all, he was a pioneer of technology. He pushed the boundaries of animation with every film he made, and founded the Imagineering department in 1952 to create those groundbreaking animatronics and rides for Disney theme parks. His legacy continues. Today, the Disney company owns over 6,000 patents, which are used by other tech rivals and pioneers like Apple, Microsoft, Samsung, and Intel. So it's not surprising to learn that the first president and co-founder of the Cryonics Society of California, or CSC, Robert Nelson, claimed that Walt wanted to be frozen. In 1972, he told the Los Angeles Times, "We got a call from Walt Disney Studios asking us how many people had been frozen, and what kind of facilities we had, and who the medical staff was. He was a very brilliant individual, and he was checking all the bases." According to the stories, Walt's body is in its chilly chamber in a secret vault underneath Disneyland, specifically under the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, which opened on March 18th, 1967, barely 3 months after Walt went to the Magic Castle in the sky. Then again, some say only his head was preserved, since the technology was in its infancy and his brain is the thing that really mattered, and his tumor-ridden body wasn't really worth resurrecting anyway. So, is it true? To find out, let's trace back the origins of the myth, the very first instances of it being reported. In 1969, the French magazine Ici Paris claimed Walt was frozen. The National Tatler claimed he was going to be thawed in 1975. Why 1975? Did they think that Disney thought that there would be a cure for cancer less than a decade after his death? Optimistic. But the first recorded reference to Disney on Ice came from tabloid paper The National Spotlight. Their reporter claimed to have snuck into the hospital in which Disney died and stumbled across Walt in suspended animation in a cryogenic metal cylinder. So the first reports of Disney putting himself in the cooler come from the kind of trashy tabloids that the Men in Black use for their galactic gossip gathering. Not exactly reputable sources. Which is why some folks claim the Mickey Corporation didn't mind the rumors for decades because the general public would never believe them. Until the information age booted up its digital dossiers, allowing anyone and everyone to uncover the truth. To quash the rumors, Disney deliberately made this catnip for kids so that a Google search for the words Disney and Frozen would forever bury the cryonic secret under thousands of inane movie articles. I mean, why else would they make an animated musical adaptation of a Hans Christian Andersen story about a princess with aquatic abilities aimed at girls? Crazy! As fun as it is to entertain this theory, the weight of evidence is against it. His daughter, Diane Disney Miller, made clear in 1972, "There is absolutely no truth that my father, Walt Disney, wished to be frozen. I doubt that my father had ever heard of cryonics." And again in 1998, "I can tell you he's not frozen. He was cremated, and his remains are at Forest Lawn in Los Angeles." When we first heard that rumor, we laughed. Then, to our horror, we realized that people really thought he was cryonically preserved. How goofy. And again in 2012, she said she opened the Walt Disney Family Museum partly to refute the rumors he'd entered the big sleep with a big chill. Perhaps most damningly, Robert Nelson himself said, "Lots of people think that Walt was frozen and that the body's in cold storage in his basement. The truth is, Walt missed out. He never specified it in writing, and when he died, the family didn't go for it. They had him cremated. I personally have seen his ashes. They're in Forest Lawn. If Disney had been the first to be frozen, it would have made headlines around the world and been a real shot in the arm for cryonics." And lo and behold, his death certificate shows that he was cremated on the 17th of December 1966 at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. But I can see why the rumors arose so quickly after his death. The book that put cryonics on the map, Robert Ettinger's The Prospect of Immortality, became a sensation in 1964. Within 2 years, Robert Nelson had set up the CSC and received willing guinea pigs. In fact, the very first cryonic preservation of a person occurred on the 12th of January 1967, mere weeks after Disney died, and around the time that National Spotlight reporter claimed to have found a hidden Disney-shaped popsicle. That first cryonic freezing was overseen by Robert Nelson as president of the CSC. Coincidentally, the CSC was incorporated in California on the very same day that Disney died. Weird. I think it's easy to imagine what happened. It's 1966. Cryonics is a hot topic. The world is shocked when tech pioneer Walt Disney gets a diagnosis of lung cancer and dies a month later, just weeks before the very first wealthy white man is frozen after death, and while the last ride Walt personally oversaw is under construction. A few years later, Robert Nelson gives an interview in which he says that Walt's in his basement. People reinterpret that as Walt's buried under Disneyland, and, well, the myth writes itself. For me, the most telling fact is the emphatic denial by the very people who'd benefit the most from being able to count Uncle Walt as one of their own. I also think his family wouldn't deny it so strongly now that cryonics has become an acceptable indulgence of the wealthy, with thousands of people on the waiting list. But I suppose the very nature of cryonics as a system whereby dead people wait until technology has developed to the point where they can be resurrected means that only time will tell if Walt will return, whether as a healed man, a clone, or some robot monstrosity. Will I be alive to see it? Only if I can find tens of thousands of dollars lying around. But what do you think? Do you believe the urban myth that Walt Disney was frozen, or do you just hope it might be true? Or do you think it's utter nonsense? Cryonics is still a bit of a controversial topic. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, then firstly, thank you for watching. Secondly, please give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe if you haven't already to keep up to date on all of our future uploads, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss anything. And massive thanks to all of our YouTube members and Patreon supporters, some of whose names you can see on screen right now. If you'd like to support the channel and join them, then please go over to Patreon by clicking the link in the description or click the join button below the video. This is our new channel and it's going to be the home for all of our non-podcast and quiz videos, our documentaries. So please do support it, help us grow, and if you like it, then let us know what you'd like us to cover in the future. See you next time. Thanks for watching.